Up next, we have a public information session for the municipal aggregation opt-out period, which runs from March 19th to April 21st.
And I'll introduce from MassPowerChoice. These are our consultants. They've been working with us for almost 2 years. So Marlana Patton is going to do the presentation, and also Paul Gorman, the CEO, is here as well. Just a quick refresher, and maybe Marlana will get into this, but just a reminder, the municipal aggregation was approved by the legislative body town meeting in May 2023. And so it's been about a 2-year process to get to this point to launch. In July of 2023, so a year and a half ago, is when the select board set the 3 choices that the consumers would have, and then it took us almost a year and a half to get through all the agency review, DPU, everything else, finally to the launch phase. And so that's why, I guess that's a short version of how we got to where we are, and this is a public information session, one of 2 that we're holding that Marlana will be leading, so I'll hand it off.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, so thanks very much for having me. So I'm going to speak to you folks, and then the folks behind me, it's also for you too. As Joe said, my name's Marlana Patton. I'm with MassPowerChoice. So we are the consultants hired by the town to help implement and support the program on an ongoing basis. And I like to just say that out front, just so that the folks listening know that we're in it for the long term. So we help the town develop the aggregation plan, take it through the regulatory review process, go out to bid and sign an electricity supply contract. And then now that the program's launching, we're providing customer support. So if you call that number, it's us that you're calling. And we'll just be around for the long term, as long as the town wants to work with us. So I'll start with this slide, which is, and I'm just going to angle myself so I can see my slides. I always start with the cover slide, the bottom part where it says it's an electricity program from the town for residents and businesses. And I like to start there to clarify that this is a municipal program. It's not a private program that is owned by a private company. It's a public service that's being offered by the town, and it's regulated by the state. So that makes this program more transparent than a lot of the private offers in the marketplace, and it's special for Hanover. So only for electricity customers in Hanover. If you have a friend in another community who wants to participate in this program, they can't. And so that makes it really unique and special for the community. And as a footnote, before I advance the slide, I'll say that Hanover is joining more than 200 other cities and towns in Massachusetts with programs like this already. So it's very familiar ground in the state. So what kind of program is it? Well, the official name for it is a municipal electricity aggregation program, and that's a mouthful. And if that leaves you as confused as this dog, then another way to think about it, it's a form of group electricity purchasing, and it's a municipal alternative to all those private offers in the marketplace that I just mentioned a moment ago. So what's in it for you as an electricity customer in Hanover? Well, there are 3 big benefits. One is you get new choices for the electricity supply part of your bill. So I'll just pause here and say that this program impacts the electricity supply charge on your national grid bill specifically. Not the delivery charge portion, but the supply charge portion. That's the part of the bill where you pay for the electricity you use. So through this program, you get 3 new choices for that part of your bill. Another big benefit is you get stable and consistent pricing for that part of your bill. So these prices are actually going to be fixed for 30 months from May of this year until November of 2027. So that makes them different from when you have National Grid's price for the supply part of your bill. That's the price that's changing seasonally. You might remember a few years ago at the beginning of the Ukraine war when electricity prices skyrocketed up to 14-year highs. So that was the price for the supply part of your bill because National Grid's prices change seasonally. That's the kind of thing that won't happen in Hanover's program because there's a long-term fixed price available. And then the third big benefit is the potential for savings compared to National Grid's prices. And at launch, you're definitely going to get savings through the program, and you have the potential to save down the road. I just have to offer the caveat that the town can't guarantee there's always going to be savings because, like I said, National Grid's prices are always bouncing around and Hanover's price is fixed. But most communities with programs like this do see some savings. So one big important detail to get out early is that Hanover Energy Choice is not a replacement for National Grid as your electric utility. And in fact, you don't have a choice in that here in Hanover. National Grid owns the poles and the wires. They're always going to deliver your electricity. They're always going to send the bill. You're always going to call them if the power goes out, and you can't change that. But what you can change is who your electricity supplier is. So that's the company that buys electricity and puts it on the grid for you. So there you do have a choice. And to understand that choice, it can help to understand that you actually have 3 ways to buy your electricity in Massachusetts. The first way is to have your utility buy it or supply it for you in addition to delivering it. So on the previous slide, I mentioned that National Grid's always going to deliver your electricity. When you first open your electricity account, they also provide another service for you. They buy electricity for you or supply it. So they provide you with 2 services. When they're doing that, you have what's called basic service. And that's when you have National Grid's basic service, you have National Grid's price for the supply part of your bill, and that's the price that's changing seasonally that I mentioned before. Your second option is if you sign a private contract with one of these companies in the marketplace. When you do that, National Grid is still your electric delivery utility. They're still delivering your electricity, sending your bill, turning the lights back on when the power goes out. But when they calculate your electric bill and they calculate the supply charge on the bill, they're going to use a price that you get from that private company instead of their own price. And then your third option is if your town signs a contract with one of those private companies instead of you, but you get to benefit from it. So National Grid is still your utility. They're still delivering your electricity. They're still sending your bill. You're still calling them when the power goes out, but when they calculate your bill and they calculate the supply charge on it, they use the price that the town got through their contract. So that's what aggregation is, and that's what Hanover Energy Choice is. Now, the next 2 slides are just pictures that illustrate what I was just talking about. So this picture is basic service. So this is when you first opened your account and you haven't made any other choices. National Grid is providing you with 2 services. They're supplying and delivering your electricity, and you have their price for the supply part of the bill, that basic service price that changes seasonally. This slide is what the picture looks like with Hanover Energy Choice in place. And it's really almost the same picture. In fact, the right 2/3 are exactly the same. You'll see that National Grid is still delivering your electricity, and there's no change or interruption in the relationship between National Grid and you, the customer. There's no interruption in the flow of electricity or change in the quality. There's no change in how they bill you. All of that's still the same. The one thing that's changed is all the way on the left, the supplier is now in orange because National Grid isn't the one buying the electricity and putting it on the grid for you anymore. That's going to be a new entity, and that company is GridWealth Electric. So that's the company that won the bid. Hanover accepted competitive price bids from multiple different companies. GridWealth won the bid. So they're the ones that are going to buy electricity and put it on the grid for you. So I mentioned at the beginning that one of the big benefits of the program is 3 new choices for the supply part of your bill. So that's what this slide is about. And the whole left side of it are those 3 choices. And then on the right side, we have the National Grid residential price that we can compare them to. So if we look all the way on the left, we have Hanover Standard. Under it, it says auto enroll. So the town had to choose one of these 3 options to be the one you get if you don't make another choice in the program. So when you first enroll, if you don't make any other option choice, you're going to get Hanover Standard. That's the default, and it's the lowest price in the program. And you can see that price is quite a bit lower than National Grid's current residential price, which is all the way over on the right at 14.672 cents. Hanover's standard price is 13.107 cents. So with those two options, you're getting the same electricity mix, but you're just getting a Hanover price when you're getting the Hanover Standard option, the lower price. Now you have two other choices in the program, and those choices you can make depending on what's important to you. So with Hanover Greener, you can choose to pay a little bit more. It's still cheaper than National Grid's current residential price, but for that extra money, an additional 20% of the electricity you're buying is going to come from renewable sources like solar and wind. So when I say an additional 20, I'll add that all the electricity that you buy in Massachusetts by law already includes a minimum amount from renewable sources. That's the state law. So that's 63% this year. Goes up a little bit every year. So through Hanover Greener, instead of getting 63% from renewable sources, you'll get 83%. So if that's important to you and you want to be a little bit more environmentally focused, but you're trying to balance cost with that, you could choose the Hanover Greener option. And then if you really want to make a big commitment to renewable energy, you can choose the Hanover Greenest option, which is the most expensive option in the program, but still cheaper than National Grid's current residential price. And with Hanover Greenest, 100% of the electricity you're buying is going to come from renewable sources. And for that, as I said, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's a choice that you make. You don't get Hanover Greener or Hanover Greenest automatically. The cheapest one, Hanover Standard, is the one you get automatically. To get the other two, you just have to request them. And then National Grid's basic service is what you have if you have not chosen a private contract with your electricity supplier. And that's what you would stay with if you decided not to participate in Hanover Energy Choice. All three of those Hanover prices are the long-term fixed prices I mentioned at the beginning. So they'll be fixed from when the program launches in May of this year through November of 2027. And that National Grid price, that's a 6-month price that went into effect on February 1st. It's going to change on August 1st. We don't know what it's going to be. National Grid's prices always bounce up and down. We're thinking it's going to go a little higher, but we'll see when it happens. So what does this look like on your bill? Are you going to get a big, confusing new bill? The answer is no. Your bill is going to look pretty much the same as it does now. But if you look at the supply services section, which is not the first part of your bill, the whole first part is delivery services, and those are regulated charges, and we can't do anything about those. If you skip that and go to supply services, you're going to see Gridwealth Hanover Energy Choice listed as your supplier and their contact information. And then in the line where it calculates your supply services charge, you'll see one of those three prices, depending on which program option you've chosen. The decimal's in a different place on this slide. So on the previous slide, it was 13.107 cents, because we were talking in cents. On your bill, it's in dollars, so it's 0.13107, but it's still the same number. So that's where you would see the price matching up to which option you chose. But otherwise, you're not really going to see big changes, and that's one of the nice things about these programs is they're very invisible to consumers. There's not a lot of friction. Your primary relationship for electricity remains with National Grid just like it is now. They're still delivering your electricity with no interruption. You're still calling them if the power goes out, same as you are. They're sending your bill, you're paying them. If you have automatic bill payment or some other kind of payment set up with them, there's no change in that, and you're not getting any additional bills because of this program. As you could see from the previous slide, we're just changing the price that's used to calculate a piece of the bill. That's it. And then importantly, if you're eligible for any discounts from National Grid, like a low-income discount or fuel assistance, you continue to receive those discounts. They are not impacted by participating in this program. Now, I mentioned participating. How does that work? It's easy because by state law, programs like Hanover Energy Choice use an automatic enrollment model. That's the case for all of the more than 200 programs like this in the state, and it's not a choice that Hanover made in launching the program. Specifically, if you have National Grid's basic service, meaning you have not signed a private contract with an electricity supplier, so you just have what you got when you opened your account, you're going to be automatically enrolled in May, and you would see the price on your bill in June. If your account is eligible for automatic enrollment, you would have already received a notice in the mail from the town bearing the Hanover Town Seal. Now, if you got something in the mail and you're not sure if it was this notification, always remember to look for the town seal. There are a lot of private companies that will do marketing around the time a program like this launches and try to confuse you. So the town seal is really going to be the thing to look for. Now, the program does have an automatic enrollment model, but a hallmark of these municipal programs is that participation is not required. So that means you have the choice to opt out before being automatically enrolled. If you got one of those notices, you don't have to participate, or you can choose to participate and then change your mind anytime in the future. There's no penalty or fee to leave the program. There's no minimum participation period like there is with some of the private contracts. So you can always leave the program. And that means including if you just want to try it for a month or two and then leave, that's fine. And somebody will, I'm sure, ask, what if everybody leaves and only 2 people stay? Will they still get the price? They will. The electricity supplier takes that risk. The electricity supplier has committed to that price. It's in the contract. So no matter how many people opt out, if you want to participate, you'll still get the program price. Now, some common questions and answers. The first one, what if I've signed a contract with an electricity supplier already? So what if you are not somebody with basic service? What if you have a private contract and you have a great price and you don't want to give it up? Or you've got a few months left and you have an early termination fee. You don't want to pay that fee. Well, you're not going to be automatically enrolled, and you shouldn't be. You signed a contract for yourself. But you can choose to join whenever you want, and you'll still get the program price. So that means you could finish your contract and then choose to enroll at the end of it, or if you want to break it, you can enroll now. That's entirely your choice, but it is a choice that's available to you. You just have to take a step to do it. It doesn't happen automatically. What if you have solar panels or you participate in community solar and you're getting credits on your bill or some kind of an incentive payment? There's no change there. Participating in a program like this changes your supply price, but that decision is not connected to how your credits or your incentive payments are calculated. They're completely independent of each other. So you can participate in Hanover Energy Choice and still get your credits on your bill or an incentive payment, and those payments are still calculated the same way. If you have a low-income discount, fuel assistance, as I mentioned before, no change, you still get those benefits. And if you have National Grid's budget plan, which is when National Grid estimates your use over a period of time, and then based on that estimate, they charge you the same amount every month, there's no change with that. You can still participate in that and participate in Hanover Energy Choice. So this is the last slide, and this is just a look at the top half anyway, is a look at the program website, which I like to show people because if this is all too much and you've forgotten everything, just remember HanoverEnergyChoice.com, because you can pretty much do everything there. In the upper right corner, there are 3 buttons: enroll, change your option, or opt out. So you can click on those and you can get quick forms that you fill out to make any of those choices. There's also, as you can see, a customer support link there in the navigation that has the customer support phone number and a form. The prices over on the left are always there. It's a regulatory requirement that the website always has to have the current National Grid prices on it, so you can always go here to see what National Grid's prices are. And there's a calculator. So we know that National Grid's prices are always changing, so comparing Hanover's price to National Grid's price is really best done if you're comparing it with the average of National Grid's changing prices, rather than always looking at every 1 6-month period. We can't look down the road and say where National Grid is going, but we do have their historical prices. So if it would be helpful for you to compare Hanover's prices with National Grid's most recent 12-month average, you can do that on the calculator. And then there's just a bunch of other resources. So thus endeth my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I will go ahead and open it up to the audience. I think that this presentation is more geared towards the audience than the board itself. For anyone that does have a question, if you have a question, if you could just raise your hand, and when I call you to ask your question, you could just come up to the microphone so that those online or listening to the presentation at a later date would be able to hear it. Is there anyone in person or online that would like to ask a question? Yes, please come up and ask it. Would you like to come up to the podium and ask? If that's a challenge, I can always just repeat it for you too, your call.
Can I just do it?
Yes.
Yeah, and was others been asked, is there all the other charges in other words, from National Grid that don't exist, like the distributing? I see that it says like energy, in other words, renewable energy, and you have part of that, in other words, in, you know, you mentioned a different program for Hanover, so I was wondering if you'd be paying that twice.
So the delivery part of your bill, which is what you're looking at, those are all regulated charges, and none of us has any ability to change those. The only part of our bill that we can change is on the supply side. So that renewable energy charge is always on your bill no matter what, and that's not a charge where you're buying renewable energy for your personal use. It's a different kind of regulated fund. On the supply side, though, you can choose whether you want to buy more of your electricity from renewable sources by choosing one of those options in the program. But that's your choice.
So basically, I mean, and it's on this bill, it's $132, and only part of it is, you know, it's the basic service fund at the 146 is 53. So, you know, all those other charges, you're only talking really minimal pennies.
Right, so we're just talking about part of your bill. So this program does not impact your total bill. It's just that supply services, because that's the part of your bill where you pay for the electricity itself, and it's the only part of the bill that we as consumers can have any influence over. The whole rest of the bill, I wish we could say that this program was going to wipe those charges away, but they're in place whether you're in this program or you're not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I will add just a note to that. One of the reasons that Hanover began looking into this is because the spike in prices that we saw for National Grid, a lot of people opened up their bills and saw a significant leap 2-3 years ago, I think, at this point in their bills, because that National Grid charge had skyrocketed up. And so when the charges are reasonable, the impact, depending on your electrical use, may not be incredibly significant in terms of your bill, but it is providing, I think, a little bit more steadiness than we see come from National Grid. So whatever your charge is, it's not going to be kind of jumping all over the place every few months like we've seen there.
But I called National Grid and I wanted to see if they would match currently what Hanover is offering. Of course, they laughed. But the thing is, they are fixed for 6 months, so in June they change.
Yes.
And then,
And this would fix for 2 years, but I believe,
6 months, they could go down.
yeah. And I think, and I guess that's a question that I have that I'll ask for the audience is, I know that when all that happened, I was one of those people that looked and was looking to find a cheaper supplier. There were different options for suppliers, so some locked you in for 6 months and you couldn't leave the program, or you had to pay a fee or something like that. Some it was 2 years, some you weren't locked in at all, but the charge was a little bit higher. When residents enroll in this program, are they locked in, or if they see a lesser rate, say from National Grid in August, can they swap over to National Grid?
Oh, you can leave the program anytime with no fee or penalty. So that's what makes the program different from a lot of those private offers, is there's no minimum participation period, there's no early termination fee. If you want to participate for 1 month and leave, you can do that. Doors open.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from anyone in the audience? Yeah, ma'am, if you could just come up to the podium, and I apologize, I should have said this. If you could just say your name and address too, that's one step I missed.
You're guaranteeing this price for 30 months.
Yeah.
The town's contract with Gridwell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about, you said 200 towns are already in this program. Can you talk about how much that goes up or fluctuates after that guarantee piece?
So, and I don't know, will this pick up if I want to make sure I can face you when I talk to you? So for starters, the 200 other communities all have their own programs. So this one's unique to Hanover, and these prices are unique to Hanover. But with regard to where the price goes afterwards, It's all going to depend on where the electricity market is. So these prices are set because the town goes out to the market and they ask electricity suppliers to submit competitive bids. So the electricity suppliers compete based on price, and their prices reflect where the electricity market is at that time. So at the end of these 30 months, Hanover will go back out to the market and will ask electricity suppliers to submit prices, and those prices will reflect wherever the market is at that time. The electricity market could be higher or it could be lower. It really just depends on factors we can't control, like the Ukraine war kicking off and spiking prices, or sometimes there's a surplus of natural gas and prices drop. So it's really just going to depend on where the market is at that time. We have not seen massive swings other than that one big one at the start of the Ukraine war, but again, we can't predict the future. The thing to know, though, is that the price change shouldn't come as a big surprise because the town is required to provide public notice 30 days before price changes happen. So it shouldn't be the case that you suddenly open your bill and you're like, whoa, why did this price spike? Which happens with those private contracts a lot of the time. You get enrolled and then you don't see the end coming and then they move you to a super high price. So the towns are supposed to do, and Hanover will do, a public notice before the prices go into effect, so you know what they are. And if you don't like the new price, you can leave it that way.
Do we have any other questions from anyone in the audience? Yes, sir. If you could just come up and state your name and address.
Catholic Richard Drive, and it seems the thing that is different from all the other ones is the supplier. So the supplier that will provide our electricity will no longer be the same provider, supplier that National Grid uses. So how reliable is this company that we don't know who it is, right? Is it solar power? Is it, you know?
Well, it's a good question. People worry about it. For starters, the same types of companies that bid into aggregations also bid in to supply basic service customers. So if you have basic service, you're already getting electricity from one of these types of companies already, because National Grid is not generating your electricity. They're buying it from the same middleman companies. GridWealth in particular is a newer electricity supplier. They're actually based right here in Massachusetts. They have one other program like this in Massachusetts, so they're kind of getting up and running, which is, I think, why they were providing such an incredibly good price. You guys got a really good price. If there's a problem with them, there's no danger of losing your electricity. So these kinds of choices don't impact whether or not electricity flows. We have a grid operator here in New England that is tasked with making sure our electric grid has a stable amount of electricity on it at all times. And if some company suddenly stopped putting electricity on the grid, that would destabilize the grid. So our grid operator has standby electricity generating plants just waiting in the wings. So if something happened and GridWealth decided they weren't going to live up to their obligation, our grid operator would make sure that these plants turn on, there's enough electricity, everybody's getting electricity, and then this company would be assessed financial penalties. But there wouldn't be any interruption in your electricity flow, and if for some reason they went out of business, then either you would get National Grid's price at that time, or maybe another supplier would honor their price.
Marlene, I have a question online as well. It's from Judy Higginbottom. If I chose greenest at first and changed my mind, can I change to a less expensive option before 2027?
Absolutely can change back and forth from any option to another at any time.
Awesome, thank you very much. Anyone in person or online that has a question?
That's kind of like the question I want to ask. Stephen Chandler, Time Lab Drive. I'm assuming it changes in your billing cycle?
Yes, it goes really tight.
So if you don't actually, so if the day before your billing cycle ends, most likely you're going to have to pay for the next month. I'm sure they can't.
Yes, right, and I don't know, I hope you can hear, but yes, so National Grid doesn't make changes in the middle of a billing cycle. They only make changes at the beginning of a billing cycle. So if you make a decision that you want to leave the program or you want to change from one option to another, but you make that decision just a few days before your new billing cycle starts, probably there won't be enough time for those big wheels behind the scenes to turn to get that change in place for that billing cycle, and it would just go for the next one. I always tell people if they want to make sure a change happens for the next billing cycle, they should call a good 2 weeks before the start of that billing cycle.
Probably one last question. Why did you pick 30 months?
30 months, well, you guys can talk about it, but it was the best deal, right?
That's right. So the 30-month was I guess, ultimately my decision, but I got some input from some other people. It was the best deal, and we wanted to find the lowest price to kick the program off with, so that's why we selected 30, rather than some of the other options that I don't remember the different, times, but that's why we picked the 30.
I was just looking at some other towns and companies meeting. I noticed that some of the shorter ones were actually cheaper. That's why I was asking 30 months. But that price was good, don't get me wrong.
Well, it really depends on where the electricity market is, when that town went out to bid. So the market's constantly changing. And sometimes the shorter term contracts are better price contracts, and at other times the longer price contracts are better price contracts. And that's just something you have to evaluate when you look at the prices.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions online. Does anyone in person have a question? Mr. Luca?
Yes, I just have a follow-up question about changing suppliers. If somebody does opt to leave the program, are they then able to come back into the program?
So yeah, you can leave and you can come back, but with one caveat. So the programs are not designed for people to bounce in and out all the time. That's very expensive for the electricity supplier. And if they had to bear the risk of knowing you might have thousands of people moving back and forth, they probably would have bid a higher price. So there's a caveat in the contract that allows or provision in the contract that allows the supplier to charge a higher market price if someone opts out and comes back during the same contract. Now, they don't all necessarily do that. And right now, none of the suppliers are doing that. We saw that happen when the Ukraine war started and the electricity market prices went really high, and we had suppliers that had guaranteed towns very low prices, people that had opted out and wanted to come back in and get that low price, and the supplier had to go out and buy it at a high price and sell it at a low price. So that's the only time we've seen them invoke that contract. Since that crazy volatility has died down, none of the suppliers are doing that, but I just have to offer that caveat that it is possible. If that's the case, if that is happening, when somebody submits a request to re-enroll, we would proactively reach back out to them and say, here's the deal, the supplier's offering a market price, here's what it is, it's your choice, do you want it or not? Nobody gets enrolled in a price that's different from the contract price without their consent.
Okay, but we don't know that if people try to re-enroll, they'll get this advertised price that the supplier, GridWealth, could enact that caveat.
Correct.
And charge a market rate?
They could, but they would know it before it happens. Correct. And right now, none of the suppliers, including GridWealth, are doing that.
Okay, well, it's good for people to know. Thank you.
And then not so much a question, but a comment on my end. I know when I was looking at energy suppliers to try and find the different options available, I wouldn't say they hide how much of it's renewable energy, but to the extent you're interested in supporting renewable energy for more than the minimum, you have to kind of dig into their contract information to get that. And it is just really simple to be able to look here and just see, I want the minimum, I want more, I want all. And it just takes a lot of the legwork out for us as a consumer. Just something I noted as I was looking. Any other questions from anyone in person? I'm not seeing any others online.
Just one more follow-up
Mr.
question.
Luca?
For those people that are in, say, a long-term contract with an outside supplier, you said that they'd be able to join the program at this advertised rate.
Yep.
Say if they're with that supplier for another year and then try to join, will they still be able to
Yep.
lock in this rate?
Yes. Yep. So it doesn't matter if you have 2 years left on your contract and then you want to join this program, you'll still get the price. Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other questions, either in person or online. And so I guess thank you so much. I know you guys have been working with us for quite a while on this now and really excited to get this launched. Just a reminder to everyone that the opt-out period ends on, or the initial opt-out period, I suppose, ends on April 21st. Is that? I think that's correct.
Yep, that might be, that sounds right. Yeah. And just what I always like to clarify, that's not opting out forever. That's just if you're eligible for automatic enrollment and you don't want to be automatically enrolled.
Excellent.
That's the deadline for that. And if you want to choose another option, I would recommend doing it by that date too.
Excellent, thank you very much. And I do know that there will be another session similar to this held at the Council on Aging. I believe it will be on the 16th at 1 PM?
Yes.
At the COA. So if there's anyone interested in getting more information, or they missed this and would rather ask a question in person than listen to the questions that were posed in the room, please definitely attend that. So thank you all so much, we're really grateful.